Welcome back once again. Thank you for sticking with us through that briefest of breaks, and we are back again with the official English language broadcast of the Overwatch Pacific Championship. My name is, of course, Matt Pixie Carroll, and joining me here on this cool casual couch is Kevin AVRL Walker and Matt Smite Ross. Fellas, say hi.
Cool and cash.
Come on, with some enthusiasm.
Okay, look, I was going to, but I was going to let him go first, and then I would go. So, like, howdy ho, there you go.
You can both just go hi, but in any case,
say hi now.
we are going to be coming on. Yeah,
I was going to do an Overwatch quote as well, but
well, too late.
It was great when Fireball come on.
So, yeah, Fireball. Well, it is going to be Fireball taking on Blank Esports for this next matchup, and we were starting to touch on this a little bit beforehand. It has to be fair to say that Fireball are on the up and up after the end of the last round robin. They had some very solid performances, right? But Blank are still at the top of the table undefeated. So Blank still expected to win. Blank now should be coming up in just a moment. Of course, the only Australian team in this tournament. So with respect to that, guys, Fireball, the best they can get out of this is positives for future games. What might those positives be? What do you want to get out of this matchup with your Fireball?
A win. No,
a win. Just win.
2 map wins. I'm gonna say the same thing I said about Flash Wolves. About Fireball as I did for Hong Kong Attitude against Blank. Now, 1 map win would be a victory. 2 map wins will be astounding, and 3 map wins, which would give them the match, would be unheard of. That's the same criteria I'm gonna give to Fireball now. This is a measuring stick for them. I'm not expecting a win, but I am expecting some level of improvement versus where they were a week ago, where they were in the first round robin. I think that's important.
Sure.
So I think they've also got a bit of opportunity here because they're the home team, right? And last time Blank played Fireball, Blank was the home team. This time, also something that's really important to talk about is that Fireball have unique map picks on Control. They love picking Ilios, something that a lot of other teams don't actually do. And then they're also going to get the 3rd map pick on Assault, which is a map that Blank has actually struggled against some of the other teams more than any other map type. So,
yeah, if there is a place any team is likely to take a map off Blank right now, it is Assault.
So I've got to say, Fireball, they've got a great thing with their own map pick, which is much more unique than a lot of other teams on the first map. And then 3rd map is Assault, which they can pick the map that they think they're the most favored on, which is also statistically Blank's weakest map type. So this is...
Yeah, so what I want to add to that is I don't think that Fireball's map picks are a surprise anymore. They were a surprise in the first round robin when, wow, they just picked...
Yeah, right now Blank should be expecting
wow,
Ilios.
they just picked Eichenwalde against us. Right now, you go up against Fireball, like you said. These are just things they're like, when you go up against Fireball, you look, oh, okay, the schedule is we go up against Fireball. It's time to practice Ilios because I'm expecting them to pull it out. And secondly to that as well, Assault, statistically Blank's worst game type, game mode. That's going to be what I expected Blank to have been working on for the past week, for the past 2 weeks. If Blank, obviously, they've identified that as a weakness as well. So, surprise, surprise, expect them to have been seriously scrimming Assault leading up to the 2nd round robin. So, will it be a continued weakness? I don't know. I think it has left to be seen.
Yeah, sure. And I was actually going to touch on that as well. I mean, as much as that is the case, I mean, we identified that as a weakness, so you can guarantee Blank will have identified it as a weakness as well and would have worked to shore up that weakness. So, with that, with regards to that, what actually do Blank need to have fixed on Assault? What was going wrong for them? What does need to have changed?
I think they need to understand the way to play Assault right now, just as we're taking a look at the Fireball lineup.
Hold that thought while we just refresh everyone on the lineups. Of course, Fireball consisting of Aputo, NZNR, Zalx, Kurlos, Rocket, and Ninth. And recently they've actually been running Rocket on tank and not support. Just a bit of an interesting note there, I suppose.
Watch for Aputo on the player cams here. He's going to be doing something weird or something cute with one of his teammates. He's always doing something cool.
What if he's just not? What if he's just concentrating on the game for once? And we, like, the one time we've brought it up, he's just not doing it.
Look, see, you can't.
They got the ref involved as well? Or is that the coach?
It's not the ref, that's the coach.
Okay,
the coach.
The Overwatch hack confused me. I thought they got the ref as well, but yeah, that's the coach.
That'd be amazing if the ref
just
was
like
involved.
the full like Guinea force going on. I like that.
So I mean, I'm from Oceania, so naturally I shouldn't be supporting Blank, but Fireball are just too damn cool to not get behind. These guys are
No, they're not. They're hot. They're on fire.
That's the funniest thing I've heard all night.
That's told.
I'm a pretty funny guy.
This is even in the player camps. Yeah. So the interesting thing is not just for Fireball, but now we're seeing it on detonators, or we're seeing it on other teams. People are seriously not just changing up compositions, but changing up the roles for the players as well. Ninth and Rocket in particular now picking up tank. Zelfix is moving on to support.
And now
see
Triple
Delavi
DPS is throwing a spanner in that works.
Detonator as well. Delavi moving from DPS to Lucio. You're seeing all of these. You're seeing on flash rules. You're seeing supports playing DPSs. Everyone is seriously changing up the roles on their teams. The only team, well, one of the few teams that hasn't done that, and likely because they haven't needed to because they're so flexible anyway, is Blank, because they already have that innately as part of what their team specializes in. They don't need to make these huge shakeups to their roles.
Exactly.
Which I believe is setting other teams backwards, whereas Blank it's pushing them way ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, now with Triple DPS being in the mix as well, Blank are a team that doesn't have any. I mean, first of all, they were the trailblazers for that in this tournament. And it's actually now on other teams to kind of pick that up and adapt to it. Let's take a look at how they're able to pull off that Triple DPS. Let's take a look at the exceptionally flexible lineup of Blank.
Gumba, followed by Eat-Up. That's got to be Trill. Sorry, that's Atar.
That's Atar.
And then
It's RQT. Get it. That's RQT, you can tell because he's cute.
Kylo Ren, and of course
Adam Driver.
Adam Driver, and then Kiki.
Yeah. Blank consisting of RQT, Adam Driver, and
new member to Blank, Adam Driver.
and
Just joining
Andrew
in.
Garfield. And this production actually directed by Martin Scorsese.
Also not featured doing some kind of cool pose at the players as their coach Serenity.
Because they're blank.
Not
They're
emulating.
Blank, they show no emotion.
Blank face.
Blank, yeah, they're blank face.
Blank face.
Why did you say
But
that out loud?
I said this in week one. It's an
like
established
blank face.
Yeah, like we kind of missed it, but we get all the players' faces up in their lineups. They all got the blank face going on. All 6 of them.
I can't believe they'd wear blank face in public. That's appalling.
Well, look, whatever they're doing, it's working for them. They're sitting at the top of the table. Let's talk about what Fireball.
let's talk about why they're
so good.
So
right?
before we saw those lineups, I was sort of going somewhere with a bit of a question for you guys. So,
goody.
yeah, here we go. You ready? You ready? It's gonna be like Christmas, right?
Do we put
Ready?
our hands
Start
up, Jonathan?
unwrapping the bow. Here we go. So, Blank have kind of been the trailblazers with that triple DPS. They have forced everyone else to adapt to triple DPS, and you were sort of talking about a lot of the teams making switch ups, which is one part finding more comfortable roles, and I would say the other part is figuring out triple DPS. With that in mind, how do Fireball, their opponents here, adapt to triple DPS? What do they specifically need to do?
I said this to a couple of teams already, but one of the options is to not dynamically and drastically change up your team via roles or compositions, because if you haven't had a chance to practice that, if you haven't had a chance to refine that over scrims, bringing that out in matches, you're going to have the same problem Flash Wolves did, which is it just looked completely untested. They brought out their triple DPS, fell flat completely. It got rolled over by Machi, and that's a problem. They pulled it out against a team they're expected to beat, resulted in a 3-2 loss. So until teams are very comfortable with how they're going to now adapt to this, to what Blank are specifically pulling out, my suggestion for a lot of teams is to play what they are comfortable playing, but nail the execution 100%, and then understand that Blank are going to be able to, the other teams may pull out certain compositions, certain strategies against you, and prepare accordingly to them, play around those win conditions while fulfilling your own comfort, your own comfortable composition, and your own win condition, executing that perfectly.
I think we're going to say the same thing.
Fireball have gone to the coldest map possible, and I'm going to be the one who says it. They're going to Nepal.
So this is such a Fireball thing to do. We're all sitting here. Blank are probably sitting there as well, saying, "Oh, it's going to be Ilios. Good thing we practiced for that."
I'm not saying
like-
it would guarantee to be Ilios.
no,
I'm just
no,
saying
not
it's
guaranteed. but
Like that like Tim Allen voice came over their headsets when they saw the pick.
So they're not.
From Home Improvement, you
Our
know.
whole
I know.
week's worth of practice gone.
I know what you're talking about. So
What do we do now?
it's obviously not going to be as binary as I'm making it out to be, where they haven't practiced for Nepal at all because they're expecting Ilios. But it's such a viable thing to do because they literally said in their interview, like, oh, we're going to make Ilios our pick. It's going to be our map. We're going to play it all the time. And now suddenly they're picking it up.
Reverse psychology.
Yeah, Nepal.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so while Blank probably still prepared for this map, probably still practiced on this map, it's still such a viable thing to do to bring it out.
But they practiced on it because they had to play it against teams like AHQ, right? And let's be frank, AHQ are a more threatening team than Fireball, generally speaking, and AHQ do really like Nepal as a pick. So, I mean, you're right, it's from Fireball's perspective, this does kind of throw a bit of a curveball at Blank. But from Blank's perspective, they are going to be adequately prepared for this. Let's not beat about the bush. But this would also suggest that there is another reason Fireball have picked this map, and I'm curious to see what that reason is.
Now, before this, AHQ have been I would say AHQ are still the team that consistently picks Nepal the most.
Slippery floors and all.
Yeah, slippery floors and all. They've got the ice skates on. And
I actually found out what happened with that one. So the janitor had actually just been through. And the floors hadn't completely dried yet. So that's what went wrong.
Really, I thought someone had just dropped banana peels everywhere.
The banana boost.
Yes, that. You got it right. That's why it's so slippery.
All the banana boosts that go off there, because what happens is they peel the banana, especially when you put it on a Winston, you peel a banana and then he eats the banana and then he gets the banana boost and then he throws the skin away. I mean, Winston is terrible with littering. But let's go ahead and get stuck into the match.
We're going to start things off onto Village, and it is going to be Atar pulling out the Pharaoh. Now, that's interesting because I thought Atar's Pharaoh was benched. Apparently not.
No, I guess. Well, perhaps at the top of the second round robin, they feel they've worked on it a bit, shored up what went wrong, and are wanting to kind of bring this one back up. But Kurlos is low. He's had to go into retreat, and they pick off Zalx as well. So Blank, pretty simply, right? That was just pure exertion of pressure there. It wasn't even anything in particular. Are going to be able to take out Fireball and get the cap.
And, you know, you think Blank is going to run triple DPS, but they don't.
But you'd think wrong!
And you think Fireball going to Ilios, and they don't.
But you'd think wrong!
And they don't have to. So, for Blank, this is going to be... They want to run the D.Va, and they want to run the Winston. So that's why you're going to see Atar onto the Pharaoh. Now, Atar, he doesn't have the Mercy support, so you're seeing the damage output coming out from Fireball can easily take him down if he's not careful.
Eat you up, just straight up in front of Gunbar. I need healing. That is why we don't like flankers. In any case, though, Fireball, despite a slightly better showing in that exchange, I mean, they were able to actually take Atar out of the air, but by that point, they'd already lost too many members, and Atar had done enough damage that it didn't really matter, so still lose the fight. They do have some good ultimates coming into this one, despite the change-up, though.
And I'm really liking Gumba pulling out the Zenyatta here. He did state previously that he's really been able to bring out the full potential of Zenyatta back into the Blank compositions, and they're still playing very mobile here. Atar's actually gone onto the Soldier as well. Oh man. And RPG's getting a ton of kills on the Lucio as well.
Yeah, Zalx again getting picked off right at the top of the fight. It's become a common trend, and they were so quick to follow it up. I mean, by that point, Fireball had already kind of committed. I mean, maybe they could have retreated, but they just would have retreated and done nothing with any of that time. So I don't blame them for continuing in that fight, but it was a lost fight right from the
This just looks like Fireball trying to play catch up for composition. Kurlos has now gone into Zenyatta as well. Blank have got 5 ultimates. The only reason they don't have 6 is because Atar changed to Soldier. And Blank haven't had to use a single ultimate to win any fights. They've won fights purely off just the damage output of the regular abilities, and still haven't had to commit ultimates yet, except this.
Yeah, now here we go. Kiki going aggressive, and that's really just to keep this positioning forced onto Fireball. They've got Knight out of the mech, even though it's not a kill, and they had actually picked off, I believe it was Rocket early on, so he's only just respawned. And now they're just kind of forcing Fireball into spots they can't fight their way out of.
And that's 100-0. And I feel Fireball, the big mistake there was they were playing compositional catch-up the entire game, and you see, not for a single moment in that entire map did Fireball come out advantageously, whether it be fights or ultimates or what have you. Their only real showing of any strength there was they killed Atar when he was on Pharaoh with no Mercy support. Except for that, I didn't really see a strong performance out of Fireball, and I think a big problem was because they had to change up composition so much and never had the chance to build up ultimates, you needed those ultimates to bring yourself back into the game. They were so far behind after changing compositions, they were never going to come back now. So whatever composition Fireball go with here, I really want them to stick with it, and then at least they will have ultimates to play with.
At least. Well, we're going on to the slipperiest floor of all. That is going to be Nepal Sanctum, and we'll have to see if Blank bought their suction shoes.
The ice skates.
Yeah, all the ice skates. Yeah, who bought the suction shoes? Who bought the ice skates?
Suction shoes would slow you down, so I recommend the ice skates.
Well, the only thing is if you slip the wrong way, I mean, it's really hard to stop with ice skates if you're not good on them. And I don't know how well practiced Blank are at ice skating. I mean, they're pretty good at Overwatch, but that's a bit of a different thing. And it's just, well, I don't know what kind of shoes they've got on, but they're boots that are made for walking because they're getting
Stomping boots.
much. Yeah, stomping boots. Yeah, they're getting a lot of mileage out of this one. There was
Running
so many
miles.
puns going on at once there. That
the
Blank
thing.
were able to kind of secure the win just through sheer force of picks.
Well, the real analysis is Fireball had no positional advantage whatsoever.
Yeah, whereas Blank had the boots on the ground to make it happen.
Blank had the boots on the ground, and they actually took the ground completely off Fireball. You see Pudo, we looked at his point of view a lot there. He's chasing after Eat Up, but he's not forcing, him and the rest of his team were not forcing position out of Blank whatsoever, and they got forced back
Oh,
into
look at
spawn.
this, really overcommitted by Fireball too deep onto that point. They just kind of let Blank get him behind them. Even though they pick off Trill, they're in such a bad position that Blank, having set themselves up all around the Sanctum, are going to be completely fine.
And NZNR didn't even need to commit Pulse Bomb there. He did anyway. And look at the difference. Eat Up understands. Look, the team's in a winning position. Don't have to use the ults up. Doesn't even matter that Pulse Bomb charges pretty quickly. He's ready to use the Pulse Bomb now into the next fight, which is going to happen around the 45 to 50% mark. Fireball still sitting on 0 ultimates, I said before. They needed to keep the compositions. They needed to stop playing compositional catch-up, and then at least they will have ultimates to play with. And they do not have ultimates to play with now.
I feel like Fireball aren't actually trying to set anything up at any point here. It feels like they're just kind of walking out and going, oh, we'll see what happens and then we'll fight from there, right? But that's never going to win you a game, especially against Blank. Trill now opening up, maybe is in a little bit too deep, but he does at least find Kurlos for his trouble. Atar picking off 9th means that this is still going to be a one fight. And once again, Fireball just kind of wandered in without any plan, without any setup, and Blank, they just walked over them.
The 2 ultimates only used for Blank there to get a full team wipe for Fireball. They're starting to build those ults, but at 80%, you're too late. You're not even in a place where you've built enough ults that you've got an advantage over Blank. At the very minimum, you're now playing on neutral ground with Blank, and they weren't beating Blank at any sort of point. I don't see Fireball being able to really pull this one. And good tack visor, nano visor here, getting a lot of decent picks might be what they need.
Yeah, they've opened it up, but already Apudo is going to get forced right the way back. Now he's just got no targets. Nothing's in his sights. He finds
there's one.
AU up right at the end of that one, but they're not able to touch the point. Once again, they walk in with no plan, and by the time they're able to actually get involved in the fight that they walked into, it was too late.
Did
The
you
point
see
was
that?
gone.
Trill just had, he had both his hands up above his head, and that what that symbolizes is the hammer down. So he's going to be looking to bring the hammer down pretty soon, perhaps on the Reinhardt, which would make sense because Reinhardt's the one
Are you
that
sure?
can bring the
that's
hammer
what
down.
that symbolizes? What if he was just stretching?
Yeah, maybe.
What if he was just stretching and you look like an idiot?
I'd like to believe that he wants to bring the hammer down.
I want to believe.
So,
Have you heard?
I'm entitled to my
Have you ever
belief.
heard the X-Files theme tune in the major key? It sounds like
No.
Wii Sports. Seriously, okay, honestly, like, Twitch, if you're watching, go and look up X-Files in the major key. You've got time. It's hilarious. And it does, it just sounds like Wii Sports.
Fireball
Speaking of-
don't have time though because
Yeah, they don't have time at all. They don't have time. They don't have health bars. They don't really have anything here. They don't have the positioning.
They
Like
do
I
have a
said,
kill.
they do have a kill. That's actually better than what they've had before. But they still don't have a plan, and that's really what they need. Is they lose Rocket in 9th because they're not actually giving themselves the positional advantage here. And Blank are the ones set up. Blank are the ones going, all right, here's what they're going to do. Here's where we're going to go, and here's how we're going to win it. Fireball are going, well, I guess we'll just go fight them and hope that we win.
So for Fireball again, getting the first pick, it's good. Where and how can they then convert the further kills after that? Because 6v5 is an advantage that you can actually use. How are you using that? For Fireball, they get the pick and immediately they drop 2 members of their own. So it's a little bit like they take a step forward, they take 2 steps backwards every time.
Yeah, Fireball right now kind of looking a little bit like me, unplanned, and struggling again as they lose all of their DPS. NZNR, he is a dead man if he's not careful. He doesn't even have a recall for this one. I'm a liar. There he goes. But his team's dead. It doesn't matter.
I think you plan okay. I don't know. I can't really attest to that.
That's not what I meant. But anyway, let's see if Fireball can actually execute on this one. I mean, at the very least, they're starting to get a couple of high high damage potential ultimates out. I mean, even so, they still have to actually use them well and execute on them. And you do actually need a plan to maximize what you get out of a Dragon
So the
Blade.
plan here should be that NZNR needs to get the Pulse Bomb onto someone like Gumba, and then Apuro's Genji Dragon Blade then can get a lot of kills here.
But NZNR has already failed in the first part of that plan. He does actually pick up Gunba at the end of that one there, but now Apuro opening up with the Dragon Blade probably won't find much underneath this sound barrier. And once again, Blanket is outpicking. I mean, the members with ults died, and they still won that fight. Trill got pretty much nothing with his ult, and they still won it. The sound barrier barely saved anyone, and they still won it.
Realistically, the Transcendence from Gumba was going to be the big roadblock for Fireball. And even with Gumba out of the picture, I said, look, you might need the Pulse Bomb to take out Gumba. They didn't even need the Pulse Bomb to take out Gumba. They got him anyway. Still, they couldn't get enough mileage out of Apuro's damage.
And it's the difference between Fireball not having a plan of how they're going to win the fight and Blank having a plan of how they're going to win the fight. And this is going to be the Transcendence coming out now just to give them the last little bit of mileage as both soldiers actually running that tactical visor. But it's Blank once again getting the mileage. 100 to 0 indeed on all 3 maps. That was a Blank wash. Oh, that doesn't sound
Is there
right.
a 100 emote in chat? Is that a thing?
Go ahead, 100. I hope there is.
Chuck that
Otherwise
100.
we look stupid.
Chuck that 100 emote in there.
Well, apparently player of the game was Kiki and not anyone else.
What even was it?
What did he do?
I'm gonna assume it was knocking. I'm gonna assume it was pushing people off.
I didn't even realize they actually had any fights on this map. I thought Fireball just kind of stayed in their base the whole time.
That's a bit harsh.
Yep, I'm a pretty harsh guy.
So far in control. Kind of expected a result, but I did want to see a bit more out of Fireball. Now,
okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off there because I think that's expected insofar as Blank won. But I actually don't think any of us really expected a shutout like that. Like, even Detonator didn't get shut out by Blank. Like, no one Blank has played yet.
I think we need to write off that game for a certain
Sun
reason.
Sister, fine. Sun Sister. Sun Sister didn't get shut out against Blank on control.
Okay, yeah.
That we
I'll
just
give
saw,
you that one.
that was actually unprecedented.
And that's also a more recent game as well. I mean,
Also saw earlier today, Sun Sister's performance has increased a little bit, but it shouldn't be anywhere near the level of Fireball, right? I mean, at least if you're looking at the standings right now, but Fireball just nothing every single time, and it's not just nothing being shut up by ults, cycled well by Blank. Half the time, Blank didn't even need to ult. Blank just got kills. I mean, I don't know how to put it any more simply than that.
They followed the Korean advice.
Kills. Exactly, right?
They followed, that's all
What
it was.
advice is that?
The two rules.
fight the kaiju?
Yeah, here we go.
You hit the enemy and you don't not hit the enemy.
Yeah. You win the
Two
game
rules.
and you don't lose the game.
Oh, right.
It's simple, right? And if you're struggling to win the game, what you need to do is you need to kill them and not get killed. And that's
so-
what Blank did. They just killed the enemy and then they won the game.
On a more serious note, what that translates to, what that kind of means is essentially Blank were able to out aim and out damage, out maneuver and out Overwatch Fireball in such a way that Fireball weren't even able to draw ults out of Blank. Now, Blank were in a position where they were never on an ultimate disadvantage. And I said for Fireball, they need to not play compositional catch-up. They need to stick to a composition where they can actually build up ults, because you can keep losing, but eventually in a map, there is no position, even when you're losing, that you don't eventually get all your ults. At some point in the game, even if you lose every single fight, even if it's right at the 85% mark, the overtime mark, if you're losing, you will get your ults.
And we
But
actually
that
saw
never
that.
happened for Fireball.
We saw that earlier today. Like the biggest example and most recent one that's fresh in my mind is Sun Sister against Marchi on King's Row. Marchi were just looking like they were going to fully hold them, and they were barely using any ults. They used 1 nano boost to very easily secure a fight, and then suddenly they forgot, oh, well, hang on, Sun Sister have been losing these fights so much that they haven't had a chance to use their own ults. And like Avril said,
They walk in with 6.
eventually everyone's going to have their ults if you're not using them, and then they walk in with 6 and win the fight. That wasn't even the case.
Exactly. So eventually you walk in with 6 and you win the fight. Fireball, they didn't have a chance to walk in with 6 and win the fight. 2 things that happened for that. 1, you need to have had been on the same composition the entire time where you're not losing ult charge due to swaps. And then secondly, the other team has to have been using ults to win fights where you're not using ults to then give you an advantage towards the end. So even when you come into overtime at 99%, you will have 6 ults against maybe 2, 3, even 4 ults, but it is an advantage. And when you come with 6 ults, you are expected to win. That just never happened for Fireball.
So to be fair, some heroes in a situation where it's a 100-0 on control point, some heroes, if they are getting completely stomped, won't even get their ult with time alone. And that's the difference between control and any of the other map types, right? Control is a bunch of separate smaller matches where your ult gets reset between each of those. And because they're short enough for some heroes, for example, I think Zarya is a big one. Like no one was playing Zarya in that one, but it's one of the examples of it, is that you don't necessarily get your ult just through time alone. You need to at least contest the point at one point to actually start getting your ult up. They were just stomped so hard they couldn't even damage Blank to get ult charged.
So I'm going to translate this into Hybrid, which is going to be the next map, which, by the way, I think it's Blank's pick. What this translates to on Hybrid is, let's take for example, if the same thing happens and Blank are attacking and Fireball just get no opportunity to defend, they win 0 fights because of the length of Hybrid and how much you actually have to push at a very minimum, at a base minimum. And this is why you see a lot of teams, no matter how hard they're being beaten, when you get to the 3rd checkpoint, you will actually get a chance to hold. And that should be where you get the chance to hold, because the attackers can't, using momentum, they can't chase you so far back. They still have to push the cart, and they have to chase you with 5 members. And if you're holding ults and you're not pushing, you're not using ults to fight back, because either you don't have a chance or you're not choosing to. When you get to the 3rd checkpoint, you are going to have a full bag of ults. You're going to have a full tool belt of ults. You're going to have full deck, whatever analogy you want to use. You've got all of them, and you should have a hold. So for Fireball, at a base minimum on Hybrid, they should get a 3rd checkpoint hold at worst. And if they can't even get that, then we've got a real problem.
Okay, so I'm just going to cut you off there because the map pick is confirmed now. We are going to be going to Eichenwalde. So that's a bit of an interesting one. I sort of joked there, oh, it's going to be Numbani, because I mean, Blank do love that map. They're very favored. But I mean, they can't just, play Numbani forever, right? So this is a little bit different.
Maybe they want to demoralize Fireball because they know that this is one of their map picks.
They're out fireballing Fireball.
So, again, even on Numbani, pretty long distance for a map. At a minimum, Fireball should be able to at least get a single hold in the 3rd checkpoint. There should be no situation where Blank rolled through the entire map without stopping, without losing a single fight, without even being hindered.
I want to talk about a situation where that can happen, and that's
a Fireball completely just...
That's a Fireball use those ults in fights that they're going to lose. If they say, for example, throw out an Earth Shatter.
Or play compositional catch-up again.
Exactly.
Just throw away
so
ults.
there are situations where that is going to happen, and after that match on Nepal, Fireball needs to recognize, okay, look, even if we're getting completely trashed by Blank, there's still this scenario where we can have all of our ults, and at the very least, hold at the end of the map.
Where you're favored, by the way.
Exactly, right? So they need to recognize that's the situation and not go for risky ults, and maybe play very, very, very conservatively.
But this is all part of the plan that Pixie has stated that Fireball are completely missing.
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you, by the way. I'm still here. Hi. So
that's a good segue back to
so I kind of want to touch on the other side of this, right? So this is Blank's pick. What actually might the reason be? Because we didn't. I
think
talk,
Smite got it.
Sure, like we didn't actually talk much about.
Yes.
Hear me out. We didn't talk much about what they may pick and why before we actually saw this pick come through. So given that this is what they picked, what actually might their reasoning be here? Because it's not something we've seen much of at all, could this actually be a power play not against Fireball, but for the tournament as a whole, given, like we touched on actually in the last matchup, recent changes to Eichenwalde, etc., etc. This is not a very popular map. Could this be Blank just trying to set a precedent that, like, yes, we can do this too?
Well, as we get into the match, I'm gonna say it absolutely is. This is their chance to flex their muscles and say we can play whatever map. You want to come out and try. You want to come out and try and pick Ilios or Eichenwalde. Think again, because we can play it.
Yeah, they can play anything. They're Blank. They got the Blank face on. They're ready to go.
Get your Blank faces on, guys.
Yeah, it's like their equivalent of a game face. It's a gameplay face.
This is the Blank face.
What team was face on? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Well, wasn't Blank. So here we go. Blank on the
face
defensive.
Was on melee.
Fireball, it's like they're kind of expecting to encounter Blank at any moment, and they haven't yet. And now they've found them. At last. IQT, he's going to go down.
Wow, that's a shot. Okay, that's a good shot.
Sure, I mean, Blank just kind of, I think they played a bit too far
Maybe
back
Blank
there.
can't play Eichenwalde.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe this is
what happens
this is the kind of power play where you let yourself lose a game so you could win.
So speaking from experience, you got to warm up and you got to stretch before you hit the weights. So for Blank, you don't want to start flexing until you got the stretch, and I don't think they stretch yet, so they got to be careful of that one. You don't want to sprain yourself. Watch out, Blank.
I've got
I
nothing
don't
to
even
say
know.
to that.
Yeah, I made you speechless.
Well done. Well, Blank, they do still need to kind of find their feet here, and I'm going to be honest, they're kind of struggling. Now do have attack visor. They are just kind of looking right now to outfrag, and well, what do you know? It is working, and
Pretty
again,
strategy when you can outfrag.
yeah, they're just looking to out Overwatch their opponents again, despite the ultimate advantage. Fireball, they just didn't even get into a position that was going to favor them. Blank just kind of went right on the aggressive. EU up, unfortunately, going down at the end there after whiffing
Too
the
aggressive.
ultimate. But, I mean, they've found a defense where I would say 95% of teams would not. So Blank can cut themselves
Look, we
happy.
joke, but Blank actually sometimes will just play the, we're just out aim you.
They'll just be better, put simply.
I can't even deny that as a real thing. So
All right, well, here we go. This is going to be the aggressive move now out of Fireball. But the attack visor, nano boost on it as well. Trying to open out here with the sound barrier in already on Fireball is going to make it hard for that to get mileage. The trades are just kind of back and forth. Puto now going to try and turn it back around. Yeah, my turn indeed, but he's not really found anything. He's still now looking for ATAR, but he's going to have to put the blade away before he's got anything at all. It's just a protracted fight, and this favors Blank because they're going to be able to respawn and get a fight later on before the second point cap, and they've just drawn out pretty much every ultimate Fireball had available.
I mean, I
just called them Flashball.
who?
Flashball. Like how I nearly said Firewolves earlier, we've actually got Firewolves and Flashball.
Puto had his turn, but I think he roped out without playing any cards. Luckily, the rest of his team picked up.
He forgot to play Fireball. He had lethal, but he didn't use it. He just got blank faced. Wow.
They're actually getting a decent amount of mileage off this push, and they are able to get their ults in there. So for Fireball,
Yeah, I
even
don't know if I
in a
agree
losing
with Kiki committing there.
Well, it could be Flash Wolf syndrome where they just think they should win so much they're going to go for it anyway. And to be honest, that's a weakness for Blank. If Blank actually do that,
Quick
Fireball
ultimate.
can do.
Yeah, that was
Fireball
great.
getting return kills.
I mean, sure, yeah, but
really
well, okay. So
important.
NZ and Knight's got a really good pick there. Kind of early. So, all right, let's just disseminate what happened. Because the first thing that happened, this was the most crucial thing, was NZNR picked out ATAR, who was on the cusp of just routing Fireball. But the trade kills still came through anyway, so Blank are still holding at this position, and now Fireball are out of resources. So it didn't even matter that they got off to a great start, that they did everything right, because right now Blank are just out-aiming them.
The Puto's turn one more time.
This time he actually plays the Fireball, but it's not quite enough to make lethal. He's just, he's about 4 damage short there. They do get another kill, so it is, it still should be advantageous for Fireball. I mean, at the very least, they got the cart moving. A bit of a cheeky one from RQT to try and stop it
This
up.
doesn't look like 4 damage short to me. This looks like they actually managed to get the fight win.
But because of the store by RQT, Blank get an opportunity to defend.
Blank are going to be able to, but they're going to be able to trickle on as well, which if Fireball can play correctly, is going to give them extra ult charge and get them additional kills. Now Blank's goal here should be to not really commit ults, but to actually draw ults out of Fireball.
That was very quick, keeping ATAR alive as the dive went on from Rocket, and because of that, the Nanovisor was given the space to do the damage. Here we go, cleaning out the house now, and Blank did get the space. Fireball did everything they could, actually, to try and stop Blank from coming back into that fight, try to force them into a trickle situation. They were hoping they could pick ATAR as he came out of the gate there, but it didn't work. Blank counteracted it, and Fireball had nothing else to go on.
And they needed to pick out ATAR as well. Like, ATAR, to be honest, Blank made a really risky move there. They made a type of play that I don't believe they would have made against a much higher skilled team that they, I'll say, have a lot more respect for, because that kind of play out of Blank would have costed them dearly against a team that would have punished ATAR coming out of it, which is why I said for Blank, they needed to not commit ult. Their goal should have been to draw ult out of the other team, but because they can outskill Fireball, they can get away with that.
NZ was looking for a pick. He didn't even have the pulse bomb, but he was still looking for a pick. Getting picked off at the top of that just means Blank are going to go on the aggressive here, and rightfully so, picking out a Puto as well. And this is just going to give them time to even up the ults and make the defense easier than it has been, even though so far they've been defending at a disadvantage, sorry.
We're now at the stage of streets. I'm just going to use streets as the generic term for second checkpoint of most maps, but on the second checkpoint of, it's still a street. Doesn't matter. Either way.
I would call it the forecourt.
The point being, the card is in a position now of the second checkpoint where, as time is running out and we're going to overtime, this is the best and worst spot for the attackers. The attackers, if they lose another fight, I don't think they're going to be able to touch the card again because the position it's in is so far away.
All right, well, here we go. Fireball committing all their ults, and they need to get something out of it, but they've already lost NZNR, got nothing with the self-destruct. Neither does at least get back in the mech, but Apudo opening up with the Nano Blade again. He's not finding anything, and all of the ultimates are out of the mix now, and once again, Fireball find themselves like a police station with its toilet stolen. The cops have nothing to go on, and Blank are just well ahead.
I've never heard that one before, and I don't like it. That's good. And something I said as well, going into the overtime, this has been a super long, drawn-out fight for Fireball, which kind of works in their favor because they automatically force the overtime out. But they are also trickling
you say it works in Fireball's favor, but also when you look on the screen, they are losing. They're about to lose, and now they've lost.
I don't think I've ever said it was working in their favor. I think it was. I always said it was going to be extremely difficult for them, being the case that they have a long distance to actually go before they can force the overtime. The only silver lining that they had was because the fight went for so long, they by default forced the overtime because they were still in the same fight they were in like 15 seconds ago.
What you looking at there, Apudo?
He's looking for a firewolf.
He's looking for lethal, but he just can't find it. He's just gonna rope. Well, okay, I'm gonna be completely honest. The payload did actually get a not insignificant distance. Like, we have definitely seen teams defend. Once the payload is underway, we've seen them defend at earlier points than that as it is. I don't know if Fireball actually had been one of them, but we've certainly seen Blank get held at that point. And we also see teams first hold at Eichenwalde plenty often as well. So actually, there is still plenty of opportunity here for Fireball to hold this one, I would say.
Let's talk about what happened on that first cap for Blank though, because...
What? Yeah. I can't say what I'm...
blank-faced that one.
I can't say the term I'm thinking of on stream, but it has something to do with ruining your sheets. That's what happened.
But I want to say that what started things off was Apudo landing the shurikens onto RQT, thus nullifying was it Atar or Trill on Farah? I can't remember because he died so fast.
Actually, more importantly, Atar had been put asleep. That's what had happened there, and we didn't quite get to see that on camera until Apudo was on top of the slept Atar. They got enough damage that when Atar went into the air, they picked him off, and then RQT followed so soon after.
RQT died first. RQT died first, and Atar followed him.
Well, there we go.
Sure. Well, either way,
both died. And it was a 6 versus 4.
That's what started things off, and Fireball actually snowballed the picks and converted them into an actual cap out. So for Fireball, mostly for Blank, this is a big example of when Blank kind of let things go. I mean, it's almost like when they went up against Hong Kong Attitude, just suddenly Blank are this dominant force.
It's the Tim Allen noise.
And then, and then
that's what happens.
Blank have these Blank moments where they're just like, what?
God, I wish we had that sound effect available. I wish I could just pull that out on demand. That would be so great.
That's when you pull a Blank. Yeah. You're so favored to win, and then you just somehow get rolled.
You pull a Blank. It's like a K4 but taken to the extreme. NZNR getting picked off by Trill is all it's going to take to open this out. Actually, Blank were taking a lot of shots leading up to that, but now the trade back on EU up isn't going to be enough. Fireball didn't close out the kills early enough, and now they find themselves kind of getting fireballed.
I was going to say Fireball were pulling a Blank, but that doesn't make sense.
Or is Blank pulling a Fireball?
Because to pull a Blank, you have to be favored to win, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, they pulled a Fireball, they top-decked Fireball and found
Don't even worry about it. It's back to the game. It is a very easy clean through and run through for Blank. This time, Trill who was playing Barrett.
What are you talking about? They did actually pick off Gunbearer, and now Trill is kind of a little bit caught too far forward.
Second time
they're trying to make space for the payload like you do on a lot of escort maps. That doesn't happen on Eichenwalde because of how the defenders can position. So now actually Blank just kind of put themselves at a disadvantage.
What was that ragdoll?
Winston. That's how
he's trying to get back to the moon.
That's how he got from the moon to Earth. He got ragdolled the whole way. His rocket exploded and he died, right? But he got ragdolled through space.
Well, let's see if Fireball's rocket can explode or not. He's on Winston as well.
NZNR looking.
What's the cart doing?
They haven't even noticed. RQT carry gets headshots on NZNR, and NZNR didn't even have a pulse bomb that he could have used to get a cheeky pick, so I don't actually really know what he was doing there. But here now Fireball going to go ahead and commit ultimates to this one, given that they had actually picked Kiki. Atar just barely catching that sound barrier.
Puto's position is not good.
Down right as he tries to open up the visor. That was a sore mistake from him, and now Blank have all the space they need, despite, once again, everything was kind of in Fireball's favor before Blank just started winning.
So what Edub just did there is that was a very that was a beyond Zonda even level overconfident play, because in a lot of situations he would have been entirely punished for that. He actually tried to and successfully tried to eliminate a soldier as he's turning on the tag visor. Now, in a lot of different situations, if that was mistimed, he would have easily been taken out.
I like this out of Blank. This ownership of the high ground means that they open up all of the space for the cart to move around this. They don't even need to win. They just need to waste Fireball's time. And look, it's working. They've got the cart enough distance that they can now fight where Fireball can't find a favorable position. What is
he likes to get into the melee kills, I gotta say, but this is now a Puto being able to get some position.
To spin the gun.
When you said what you said was important, Blank were denying the high ground of Fireball. Fireball now need to retake that during this amount of time. Edup's not out of the picture just yet.
Edup's going to try and
But
make
he
it as
is
difficult
punishable.
as possible.
He's making the kind of plays where I've criticized Zonda for making very similar plays, where he's realistically going so aggressive that I'm surprised the enemy team isn't able to punish him.
But you hit the point, right, where, if you're able to get away with it so consistently, why not keep doing it? Because it gives you mileage. It can be what you need to win the game. This entire attack visor getting absorbed by Chill's defense matrix and a great follow-up means Fireball deciding to fight on the low ground. I'm going to pay for it. There's a nice bump kill to take out Rocket and Ninth as well. There we go. Blank finding all the space, finding all the room. Fireball all dead, and they're going to march this one right on up to the zone if Fireball aren't careful. Don't even know if they can really get out of the gates here. Trying to buy a couple of seconds as NZNR, but it's not enough seconds at all, and Blank faces on. That looked easy.
Something else that Fireball haven't been able to do so far in the series is right at the end, as Blank are about to get the final cap out, whether it's on Control or now on Eichenwalde, at the final moments, Fireball always failed to get the final contest on there for the last few moments, if that kind of makes sense. On Control, when Blank won 100-0, it wasn't like 99 then overtime, win a team fight, then cap out. It was just like Fireball didn't even touch the cap. Just like we saw here on Eichenwalde, Fireball didn't even touch the cap. Zelfix went in for the sound barrier, didn't even really land the sound barrier, didn't touch the cap, game was over. And Fireball have been consistently unable to get that final contest in there so far.
It's also because they lost their final team fight right next to the payload while it was at that final corner, right? And they didn't even have to get it all the way to the end. It was just before the end of the third checkpoint. So really that was their last fight, and they did lose it pretty handily.
I want to say...
I just kind of want to jump in there because, I touched on it during the game. A lot of that was also Blank playing to the objective, and the objective was only to get the payload as far as Fireball had got it. They didn't need to get it all the way to the doors. So by setting it up kind of halfway, by kind of dominating that high ground, as much as it was risky play that resulted in a lot of deaths, they then set themselves up such that they only needed to win one fight. And then they did win one fight, which they can kind of rely on doing. Even if they'd been at an ultimate disadvantage, they could have, built the ult economy back in their favor. They had plenty of time to do it. They gave themselves everything they needed to close that one out. It was just well executed.
I want to put out a disclaimer that says it's not necessarily Blank as a whole making super risky plays, although they were anyway up against Fireball, which again is something they can get away with based on that matchup. But in particular, if Blank are making risky plays, Edup is making beyond risky plays, and that's what I was specifically trying to highlight. If he does that against, I was going to say Flash Wolves, but they're kind of going downhill a bit. So maybe I'll say now against HKA or AHQ.
Well, okay, I don't know if it's quite fair to say Flash Wolves are going downhill. We've only seen one match so far. Sure they lost it, but I don't know if that's enough to say downhill.
Yeah, they haven't reached the bottom of the hill, but they're on their way down, but they can get back up.
You can just turn around and get back the other way.
You can. It's possible. So what I'm saying is accurate. They are going downhill, but they haven't reached the bottom of the hill. So technically that's fine.
What I want to bring it to for you, Smite, is we said, well, I said, and you kind of said as well, but we agreed on, is when Fireball defend, there is a point where they should be able to mount a full defense. Now, I believe they got that, but they got that a lot sooner than both of us expected it. They got that on the second checkpoint very early on. Now, we said it was going to happen at the third checkpoint, if anything. So I think in that kind of regard, Fireball did step up above expectations.
Yeah, I mean, and they got it at a good position as well, right? Like, just before the end of the second checkpoint, it's a great place to hold it, right? I mean, yes, you want to take those early fights, you know, pretty early on to contest the payload, hold it up so that if you do lose those fights, then you get that second and maybe even third chance. And that's what they got there. They got the payload held just right at the end. And because of that, there's a very long run back for Blank. It's just unfortunate for Fireball that Blank came back and just won a team fight after a few minutes.
I think Fireball actually won a fair few more team fights than many would have given credit for. In fact, to the point where I say above expectation, because quite literally, my expectation was they were not going to be able to win a team fight until they got to the third checkpoint, which in this case wasn't going to happen because they didn't even make the third checkpoint themselves, but realistically towards a point so far back that they would have almost been capped out before they were going to be able to get a hold, and they managed to win fights before that even. And not only that, but that first checkpoint attack by Fireball against Blank, again, exceeding expectations. So Fireball, I said on Control, they didn't look too hot, but on Hybrid coming in, this is an opportunity for them to bring something else out.
So I also just very quickly want to touch on like that first point. You said, yeah, the sleep dart onto whoever was playing Farah, ATAR, I think it was.
ATAR.
If they didn't change up from Control, right? That sleep dart, and then how they immediately jumped on it. We saw Apudo literally like scaling walls, dashing just to get straight to that
that
Farah.
is just Genji's kit.
Yeah, well, that's that's
described
Genji's
Genji's
kit. But look, I'm sorry for trying to hype it up.
After sleeping ATAR, Apudo played Genji. and then they killed
Well, you
ATAR.
do have a point that I want to
You know
hear.
what? Yeah, you're not.
But it's the difference between Fireball and all of the teams below them, where we actually saw earlier today, Sun Sister and even Detonator were just a little bit hesitant. They would even get kills, get picks, so that they were in a 6v5 situation and still wait to go in. Fireball get one sleep dart and go in and win a team fight very, very handily against Blank and take the first point. That shows that they are not scared of going aggressive when they find an opportunity.
So I don't disagree with you there, but I suppose I want to touch on. I want to touch on something I found a bit interesting out of Blank, and it does seem to be something that teams are now doing on Eichenwalde. Given the recent changes, it's not as easy to hold it that archway, but it does seem that a lot of teams are opting to defend further back at the point, but they weren't exactly getting any opening damage while Fireball, we were even seeing how they were moving. Fireball were moving forward going, where are they? And then they weren't where Blank was expected to be, and then they went even further forward, and they went even further forward, and they finally found Blank, and like got a sleep dart, did everything we saw, and Blank didn't have any room. They didn't have any room to retreat, they didn't have any room to maneuver, because they chose the most far back place as possible to hold out that defense. Why do we think that is? Because it didn't work for them.
I think as teams in general now, first of all, in terms of run back distance, it works a lot better for defenders. So that's just a physical thing. Secondly, I guess it has something to do with angles as well. So if they played Soldier, so you do notice that Blank played Soldier. Soldier has a lot better protection against dive. When you're in that back position, you can run back through the corridors. You can do a lot of these tricky maneuvers if you're a more squishy DPS like that. And that works towards the defender's favor as well, because if you're holding right at the choke, behind you is all open space. Now, that's great against a slow push composition that's also playing shield. You can play shield against them, you'll do fine, whatever you're playing to choke. Now, against a dive that doesn't care about that, they're going to go straight over the top of your heads. They're going to play in the open position. Suddenly, you find yourself surrounded. It's better to have that wall to back yourself up against, where that's not an angle that the attackers can take advantage of, rather than completely opening yourself in the middle of that point.
It's also just when you're running a pharmacy combo as well, right? You want to get the maximum potential out of the Farah. So you can actually, there's plenty of sight lines that go directly onto the point, directly onto the balcony, and plenty of space for ATAR on that Farah to move in and just take cover constantly. And also, they can expect to be running into a dive composition too. So very likely not going to be much that can actually contest Farah up in the sky. Now, whether he can actually defend his team before they all just get dived on by the dive comp, that's a different story. But it all played out quite differently once the sleep actually hit him. But again, there's a lot of places for Fire and Mercy by extension to fly around, hide, and still have lines of sight on the point itself.
Something that is concerning me about Blank, though, and I jokingly describe this as a blank moment, but it kind of is what it is, because it is a bit of a mind blank, or whatever it is. It's you had a blank moment when you were so heavily expected to win. Something happens that is completely opposite to the expectation that your team has. So for Blank, that consistently has now 100-0 fireball in control, they got rolled on the first defense of Eichenwalde. Let's not even joke. Let's not put any
absolutely.
that.
Let's not beat about the bush.
They literally got rolled. Didn't get a single counter kill. Nothing. So this is not the first time Blank have had a Blank moment. Against Hong Kong Attitude, against Detonator, against other teams, as much as I write off the Blank versus Detonator game, it happened. It's a thing that has happened, and this is a thing that is still happening. And what's really concerning is this shouldn't be happening against Fireball, where you've consistently 100-0, them 100-0, 100-0. How can it be for Blank that they can have a situation like this? Because this is something that happens too often for a team as good as Blank, and that's an issue.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but I think we need to kind of say something to the defense of Blank here that is quite fair enough, and that is the difference between what we just saw then and what happened. I will specifically go with the Hong Kong Attitude game because, like we sort of say, there are some other things we can say about the Detonator game and other reasons we can kind of discount it. But what happened here that didn't happen against Hong Kong Attitude is they then rallied, right? They got it right after that. Teams make mistakes. Now, it's a little bit unfair almost to go to Blank like, why are you making mistakes? How dare you make mistakes? Don't make any mistakes. Like, that's Korean advice. Just don't make any mistakes. I actually would rather...
I'm going to have to give a disclaimer for that. But
hear me? Yeah, sure. I'll give that to you in a moment. But I think we do have to actually quite fairly say that one of the strengths of Blank here, and it's even something we've seen them as being a little bit, not weak on, but having trouble in the past, like you said, Blank moments, they have often struggled to rally after the fact. That time around, no problems there at all. All these teams are making mistakes.
I'm going to say that, first of all, they're not struggling to rally back because they've still won every single game. Yeah, they were down 2 maps to Hong Kong Attitude, still won in the end, so they have rallied back regardless. Now, in terms of mistakes...
Barely. Much more barely than what we just saw.
There's a distinction you have to make here between mistake and massive mistake. So a mistake could have been, cool, we got sleep darted. Maybe we lost Trill in the Pharaoh or Eight on the Pharaoh, whoever was playing it. But we still got counter picks. It's fine. Yeah, we still lost, but we forced out. We made them really work for it. Now, there's a big difference between that and what actually happened, which is 6 kills for the way of Fireball, 0 deaths for Fireball, and Blank looked completely helpless. And again, the only reason, and cool, teams are going to make mistakes. They do make mistakes, but the thing I want to point out, the distinction once again, is Blank is so much better than Fireball. A mistake like that shouldn't happen because they're so much better than Fireball.
Okay, sure. You do make a good point. You know, yes, arguably a team should just not make mistakes ever.
That's not what I said.
I know I'm saying that in an exaggerated way, but I am functionally agreeing with you. Like you're right, actually. Yes, Blank shouldn't make those kinds of mistakes, but we do also, like I said, have to take it at the face value that they did.
It's
right?
the degree of mistake.
They did make the mistake.
You can make a mistake,
now, hear me out,
there's a grave mistake and a little mistake.
Yes,
that was not a little mistake.
I know what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. It is a big mistake. What I am saying, though, now, what it is, given that happened, whether or not it should have, given that it happened, Blank then played the rest of that exceptionally well, right? Let's say we saw it against literally any other 2 teams, right? Team makes catastrophic mistake on the first point, other team takes advantage of it, pushes way far forward. How often do we see that on King's Row, right? Where a team just gets completely pinned back in basically the end zone, and the entire street's phase just disappears before their eyes as the aggressing team just marches it through. That didn't happen at all. In fact, Blank then won a fight that by rights they shouldn't have won. So we can still say they recovered not just well, they recovered immediately.
And so what the point against that is while that's all nice and true, the thing to really consider here is this was against Fireball. What if this was against another team, let's say AHQ or even Flash Wolves on the rise again? Could they have recovered the same way and as effectively? I'm going to say they could have recovered, but not nearly as effectively because a higher tier team, I believe, would have pushed that advantage a lot further than what Fireball could have pushed.
Yeah, sure. No doubt.
The concern here is not oh yeah, are they able to recover or not? They're going to recover, but the concern is against a much better team, is it going to be enough of a recovery that then means they actually come back with a win, or are they going to lose like they did to Hong Kong Attitude on certain maps?
Yeah, the thing is though, now that this has happened, by the time they do end up in that situation, well, hey, they've had it happen to them. They can probably figure out why it happened, and hopefully not do it against a team like Flashwolves or AHQ, because you're not wrong, but this did just happen against Fireball, not against Flashwolves. So I kind of want to shift the focus now moving forward, because we're going to be coming onto Assault. Totally different kettle of fish, and we talked about it earlier in the night. If there is a place Fireball can take a map off Blank, at least in terms of Blank's recent results, recent history, this is the place to do it, and it's Fireball's pick. What are we expecting the pick to be? How can they win it?
So I'm expecting, again, Fireball, so maybe a little bit of a surprise might come out, but definitely not Volskaya. Blank have already shown they're pretty proficient in that map, and
well,
no, I'm gonna guess, and maybe it's Temple of Anubis. I was actually gonna say Temple of Anubis, but it showed up on the screen, so now it doesn't look like, I guess.
Well, if you roll out Volskaya, it's a 50-50 for you.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna guess that.
Not a bad.
You can't prove me wrong,
Not
guys.
bad odds.
Well,
not bad odds.
Ruling out Volskaya is still part of guessing it.
I was going to say that I wouldn't have ruled out Volskaya just because for Fireball, it's not about counter picking what Blank may be good on, but rather picking what they're good on, what they're comfortable on. You can counter pick out Blank, sure. Blank good on Volskaya. Maybe Blank are less good on Temple of Anubis, but what if you're also not good on Temple of Anubis? Blank is still favored anyway. So realistically, for a team that's the underdog, it's better to pick something that's more favorable for yourself rather than try and counter pick the other team.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite a valid point you make there, and the reality is there's only 3 maps. Blank are going to be favored one way or another. But let's jump on that second part of the question, which I kind of posed to you guys. We now know what the map pick is going to be, but even then, regardless of the map pick, on Assault, what's been going wrong for Blank, and what do Fireball need to do to kind of expose that same weakness?
Blank seem to struggle getting that initial rush on to point B, using that snowball. Sometimes they'll do it, but most of the time in the maps where they've actually struggled and actually even lost Assault maps, it's simply been from just struggling to get that initial snowball onto point B. And sure, they might be able to take point A pretty quickly. I think once they managed, they were actually full held on point A, which is, again, not actually fantastic. A lot of teams will actually capture the first point. It's usually pretty easy on Assault. Now, Blank, I feel like, need to start leveraging the snowball a little bit more. And usually again, they're pretty good at it, but it seems like once they've lost that snowball, they don't seem to have much past that. They seem to try and, again, like AVRL says, play composition catch-up, which is something that you don't usually see coming out from Blank. But
it's because it's so hot. The snow melts.
The snow melts.
No
snowball.
Temple of Anubis.
And that's where the Fireball roams supreme.
No, because they can't snowball either because they're too hot. They're a Fireball. I mean, both of these teams are going to struggle.
Where Blank have struggled on Assault so far has been on their ability to get a full cap out. So they've been full held on various parts of Assault, whether they be cap 1 or cap 2, against multiple teams now. And it is going to be Blank on the defense first, and we've also talked about this. In fact, you've weighed on this as well, but in the current patch, maybe defense, particularly on Assault, is the way to go. So this was Fireball's pick though, so Fireball wanted to attack first, and that's very interesting.
9th on this Widowmaker as well. I also find it interesting that it's not a Puto, but they have a plan.
Well, you need a Puto and Genji, so this absolutely makes sense. You can't afford to put a Puto onto something that doesn't have the snowball potential that Genji has, and it's good that they keep it.
This is interesting. They know there is a Widowmaker, so they're just not going to poke their heads out. And Fireball are actually kind of struggling to force the hand of Blank, force them into the Widow's line of sight. The trades back and forth are falling in the favor of Blank anyway. I mean, one of the things with picking this Widowmaker, if you don't get picks, you force them into cover, and then you can kind of take advantage of that. But Fireball didn't really do the second half of that.
You're absolutely right about that. Fireball should be able to outmaneuver Blank if they get forced into a corner, if they're scared against the Widow. And Fireball need to be able to abuse their mobility. If they're running Tracer and Genji, and a Winston as well, they should be able to use this mobility to really put themselves in a good spot. That kill in the back against Kiki will actually help them out.
Enzo has actually gotten to quite a good position here. He can also disrupt some of the respawns, and he's going to force IU up away from the point to go deal with him. Even if he dies now, on top of having forced Blank's positioning with this Widowmaker pick, they should be able to set themselves up into the point. They're going to open up with a nano boost here, and it's sort of getting some mileage. Actually, it's getting just enough mileage because once again, Fireball not quite able to follow it up.
With more kills.
Now they're starting to close out. Here we go. It took them a bit of a moment and it looked dicey for a second, but now they're actually in the spot to do exactly what they were aiming to do. They just need to keep on the pressure here because they've kind of backed off for a moment. Apudo went and looked for a health back. The team went, oh, let's just wait for some healing. The healers were dead. They didn't actually need the healers though because Blank weren't there. They peeled off the point and now Blank are just going to come back in and start defending again.
Well, I'm going to use the strategy used for taking the second checkpoint kind of applies here as well. Fireball need to sort of chip away at this cap. They've got 1/3 already, good milestone. Their next push the next 2 pushes realistically need to get the second milestone before they can get the full cap out.
Well, they're looking like they just want to do the other way of getting the full cap out, which is get a complete team wipe and then get a few more. Good self-destructs to try and stall them up, but it's not really going to get enough for them. Kiki and Goomba only just respawning, so there's no one here to contest this one. Atar rightfully holding onto his ultimate. And actually, with the way this has fallen, Fireball do have an opportunity to get a snowball going.
I don't think they'll keep 9th on the Widow though. Maybe they will. I think Widow doesn't really contribute to the snowball as much as something else could have. But for Fireball, they have a decent number of ults here. I don't believe enough ults to get them the full win, particularly not if they're going to lose Zelfix straight away.
Yeah, definitely not.
They realistically need a Dragon Blade on top of this.
They need all that in a bag of chips, and the Widowmaker forced out of the positioning as well means that they're not going to be able to open it up with just a cheeky pick. And it may well just be time to go ahead and switch off this Widowmaker, go for something with a bit more mileage. Ends and are getting picked off. They're just kind of feeding ult charge to Blank when they'd already been forced into a position from which they couldn't fight. Blank retreated. They were like, all right, now think about what you've done. And Fireball went, no, we're committing to the fight. So Blank took it kind of gladly.
Blank are in a good position now where they've got a lot of ultimates set up, and this is going to be extremely difficult for Fireball to sort of break through. What I said about the first checkpoint, that's the sort of attacking strategy you need to be applying mostly to the second checkpoint. Every single push for Fireball needs to be chipping away at that progress. 0.0%, that needs to be 10, 15, 20, eventually a third, and then get to the second milestone, and then you're in a situation where you can actually set up for the full cap.
Atar forced off this high ground, and losing EU up could be the opening they need. So they try and open it out, but the pulse bomb goes wide. They are getting a couple of kills here, and the sound barrier through for Fireball is kind of keeping their mileage going in this one. Trill as well out of the picture. He's going to be able to throw out the self-destruct, but he's not going to get much with it as Apudo is doing a ton of work here. They do, unfortunately, lose 9th as Kiki getting that one crucially made us buy seconds for Blank to get the defenders.
This is a lot of progress.
But it's a lot of progress indeed, and Fireball still have enough in the tank. Oh, hit you up, turns it right on back around, and Atar had just enough room to get onto the point. And unfortunately, Fireball not closing out the last couple quick enough to secure the full point, but with a whole third secured, they can at least color themselves happy.
I think that was a very scary moment for Blake. Had Fireball gotten a second milestone there, then Fireball would be in a very comfortable position with 3 minutes and 30 remaining. They could have absolutely gotten the last third in a separate push. Now they're going to work for that second third again, but you're right, Blank got no ultimates.
Not at all. Here we go, though. Second time around, Apudo already picking up 2, again without the ultimate being used. Unfortunately, the trades back have come through. He should have just gone aggressive, thrown out the Dragon Blade, secure it, but they actually gave Blank room to breathe, room to trade back, right? A 1-for-1 trade is a win for the defender because the respawn is magnitudes quicker than it is for the attackers.
Can't fault you on that one either. 3 minutes remaining to go. They haven't set up themselves to be so far in a position where they're realistically at an advantage to Blank. Now Blanks, because they won that last team fight, they're going to be able to charge everything back up again. Fireball, they've got to continue chipping away, but they have to get the second milestone.
Blank has survived.
It's extremely important to get the second milestone if they want to be able to get a full cap out, which I think they're going to need.
I hit you up. Yeah, well, I don't know if there is much of a window for the full cap. I mean, there's still a lot of time, so stranger things have happened, but they're only getting trades back. They've still got a bit of an ultimate advantage, but functionally, Blank they've survived what would have been the most difficult fight for them to win, which is when they had no ultimates and Fireball had 3. Fireball just didn't commit them and have given Blank room to breathe. Blank are going to take in a big breath of air and blow you away.
Or they can have a Blank moment. We'll figure out which one it is.
Or they can just blank. They just
blank
take in a big
guys.
breath of air and then they forget what to do. They're like, do I
breathe
breathe out or do I breathe in again?
You're taking too much of a breath of air and it just goes, just goes all to your brain. Either way, it's going to be Fireball coming 4 ultimates. So
This is opportunity, getting a pickup earlier as well. They didn't
And
have
this
transcendence
time-
anyway, so maybe this Zenyatta death doesn't affect them as much. The Apuro death affects them a lot more.
Yeah, that time Aputo just not finding anything going deep on that one. And they have committed an ultimate here out of Kiki. And they are just kind of going to buy time, if nothing else. Classic Pet Diva play, just to stagger the respawns, run the clock down. Fireball did actually get the second point of that cap, though, so good progress meter there, just because even without getting the kills, Aputo got them the space to do that. But Fireball aren't exactly in a great position to win.
Second milestone is going to put them in a decent position.
They can
particularly-
win. It's still not going to be easy.
because they have 4 ultimates left to go. With 1 minute 15, this is going to be about a push and a half. It's going to be a quick commit with all ultimates used, and then a struggle for the overtime, and they may be able to get it in that overtime if they're quick about this. But with only 1 minute now, it will just be the last fight.
And Blank do actually have the right ultimates here. This is where the defender's advantage really kicks in. So unless Fireball get a wipe, this will probably just fall the way of Blank eventually, but getting you up is a good way to start. Aputo, this has got to be the time he pulls on the Dragon Blade as they commit the Transcendence as well. They need
think
to
it's
get
too
the
early.
wipe.
Transcendence.
Aita, he's opening up with the Blade. Oh, but he doesn't get onto the point. The Visor only got 1. It actually didn't get the Martage. Fireball do, in fact, cap out. And I'll be frank, they did it right. They did what they needed to do. It was maybe not as clean as it could have been, but it was done well, and now we're going to see Blank in what has traditionally been the weak spot for them, where they struggled to cap out the second point.
And Blank, what happened in those final moments? Yes, Atar didn't get back on. They didn't get players back onto contest the final cap, but they should have. I mean, they got pushed out by a Dragon Blade and a Transcendence. I don't think that was threatening enough for Blank to have given up that cap. So what Fireball did is exactly what the attacking strategy for Assault is. Chip away at the cap itself, get those milestones up, and then eventually go for one death push where you actually can win. Exactly how Fireball executed that. So on that front, I think Fireball was very successful.
Yeah,
Blank, on the other hand, I think they gave it away.
Yeah, we do seem to see that more often now. I mean, what we used to see in these kinds of situations, and to a lesser extent, I suppose I'll say, the end of most escort and hybrid maps is the term I'm looking for. The way to win at the very end was to get basically a team wipe and then spawn camp to give yourself the space. That is also often what happened on Assault, but you're right, that's not really what happens anymore. You need to chip away bit by bit, and I feel like a lot of these teams still play to just cap out completely in one fell swoop.
Yeah, that's not the way you play anymore.
Yeah.
It happens very rarely. In fact, when we saw that with AHQ, I kind of see that as a one-off now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, even AHQ and Flash Wolves and a lot of the other Assault they've played, that's not even been how they've won. And they've also made a lot of that mistake as well in trying to go for the full wipe when maybe they should not. In any case, we're going to get to see if Blank can actually do that. I mean, surely they've gone away and figured out what was going wrong. Surely now they can figure it out how you need to execute on Assault.
I would say for Blank, if they lose Assault to Fireball, they have a real problem with Assault. They have a real problem anyway, but this would be
They've had a real
magnitudes
problem.
worse.
This would prove that they still have a problem and it's here to
Correct.
stay. Already though, they're off to a good start. Taking out older FB Rocket. One trade back onto Kiki though is not a bad start for Fireball's defense, but the pressure is still there from Blank. They're happy to keep it going without their Winston. They don't need that for the dive because they've forced Fireball's hand in terms of the positioning. Now going to be able to take out the healer. He can even take his time in taking that if he wants because they will be able to get the cap out here. They're just going to close it for all the kills first. I don't know if they'll have an opportunity to snowball just because they did get a bit of good ult charge here, Fireball, but in any case, easy first push for Blank.
It's not going to be much of a snowball because all they're going to be able to rely on here is a Pulse Bomb. Pulse Bomb would have to be super effective, but a lot better time than Fireball. 7 minutes to get a second checkpoint. If we're going to play the chipping strategy here, they're going to get that chip done very quickly.
Yeah, surely Blank can do it.
And like we said, if they can't do it, then this is orders of magnitude worse than we thought.
It would be an endemic problem. They're already getting right on top of it as they take out NZ and R. It also eliminates one of the few ultimates available. Trill going off now. Gets the full triple. Geez, they're even just not even going to need a chip because they're going to get a team wipe here. Zalfex is the only one left alive. The respawns can come in, but Blank have ultimate advantage. They're set up for the point. Oh my goodness gracious me. Great balls of fire. I don't believe it. Second team wipe. Why not? 6.5 minutes. Can you say time bank?
Time bank. I said it.
So
Type blank.
time blank.
6.5 minutes. This is like, I think it was Flash Rules, it was either Match Gear or Hong Kong Attitude, I can't remember which, but like, whatever team that was, right, they capped Kings Row and they had like 2.5 minutes, something like that in the bank, and we were like, yeah, that's pretty good. Like, that's respectable, you'd be happy with that. And then Flash Wolves went through with like 5.5 minutes. That's what that was right there. That was like, I think they got 1 minute to Blank's now 6.5.
Okay, so what I want to say to this is, what Blank have done here is very similar to what we saw in Nepal, where realistically a lot of the fights they won had no ultimates committed by Blank whatsoever. They didn't need ultimates to win. Having the ultimates was kind of a bonus. This was pure outskilling on an individual mechanical level. Now, what I said about the fact that teams are not usually expected to get a full cap out on the second checkpoint still holds true. But with the disparity in skill level of this magnitude, it also doesn't surprise me that Blank was able to do this.
It kind of creates
because
an
they have been
exception.
able to just win without ultimates anyway.
It creates an exception to that rule, for sure. It does actually leave me a little worried that maybe Blank still can't execute on that chip away at the point style of play, but that's just conjecture. We'll actually have to test that another day, because for now, they are miles ahead in this matchup. And if it's only because of individual skill, then hey, you'll take the win.
You'll be happy with the win too, because it's going to be an easy 3-0 for Blank if they can get this done in the time that it's taken so far.
And even if they do win this, then hey, maybe they do have problems, maybe they don't, but certainly today won't be the day we find out. And Blank, they're well poised for this defense here, already getting the picks onto Fireball, who need to really either commit to winning or losing this fight quick, smart. And I say they need to commit to winning or losing because they need to decide to back off if they're going to. They only have 20 seconds left, but they get picked off, trickle kills. I don't think they can do it.
14
Oh,
seconds.
good heavens. NZNR, what are you doing there? He's going to give up a death. And now, best case scenario, they're on this point in a 5 versus 6.
And again, Fireball so far have really struggled to force the overtime. They will get it. They should get it, assuming they don't jump off this
They'll
point.
get overtime at the very least, but Rocket, the person who got them that overtime, is already down as the rest of the team now starts to come in for the defense. Trill, good high ground there. Doesn't even need the skies for it. Just getting good picks, getting good pressure. Fireball, no matter how they slice it, they're going to fight this with a numbers disadvantage, and this is Blank territory. Easy ultimates out of them. Blank making it look simple, because really it was.
Not even Fireball, no matter how you cut it. It's like Fireball, no matter how you cast it, no matter how you channel that Fireball. It's not really.
That was a stretch.
A little bit. What was a stretch was Fireball trying to get the cap in 1 minute as well. So.
And they stretched themselves too thin as well. Not to bring that pun to its logical limit, but that is what happened, right? They didn't retreat fast enough. When they lost their first member, they should have gone, oh, no, back out right now. But they didn't. They backed out bit by bit. NZNR was still there even after the rest of the team had either been backed out or picked off. And then Rocket had to leap in way ahead of the team just to secure overtime. So you're already in a 5 versus 6 best case scenario. Then because Rocket has to leap in to get overtime and then gets picked, you're in a 4 versus 6. I'm going to be honest, you are never going to win that. You're never going to win that unless you happen to be Blank against Fireball and just out-frag them out of nowhere, which is so unlikely as it stands. Fireball never set themselves up to win that.
Unfortunately not, and the time definitely didn't help them. I mean, you see how long it took them to just get the first cap in general to start with? 1 minute? I mean, they had several minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes I think it is that you get here.
6.5 minutes.
6.5 minutes for Blank, but I mean, Fireball had a lot more than 1 minute to work with previously, and that was a struggle. So for 1 minute, definitely not enough time for Fireball to get a cap.
This is an unprecedented amount of time for Blank.
I think this is actually more time than you start with on your initial attack on the first checkpoint anyway.
It actually is. This is almost insurmountable, to be completely frank. I'm not going to say it's all over because stranger things have happened, but Fireball, this is going to be their toughest challenge this whole tournament. At least
I think we said that last time they played Blank as well, though.
Well,
every time they play Blank, it's the toughest challenge.
Well, this time it's even tougher than last time because, I mean, like you said, this is more time than what you normally have out of the gate. So they don't just have to defend the regular amount, they have to defend even more than that. And they already failed to defend against Blank with the regular amount of time. Trill being the only kill they have so far, actually, they've just got ATAR as well. But there are so few Fireball members here. They didn't even need a minute. They did it in 45 seconds. They could have done it in the amount of time Fireball failed to do it in. That, plus the absolute shutout on Nepal. Eichenwalde is forgiven. It is a fluke. That beautifully demonstrates, hear me out, that beautifully demonstrates the absolute disparity between these two teams.
Absolutely, which is why I was so shocked that on
Shocked
Eichenwalde,
and appalled.
that on
Or is that
Eichenwalde,
shocked in Nepal?
Blank could, shocked in Nepal, that Blank could even have moments where they give out a full team wipe without a counter pick. So the reason I even bring up why Blank moments exist is they shouldn't exist. For a team that is of their caliber, this kind of showing on Temple of Anubis and then also the same showing on Nepal, if they're that far ahead of Fireball, how is it possible, and again, the difference between a small mistake and a catastrophic mistake, how is it possible that they can have a Blank moment to start with? It just shouldn't be a thing that exists for this team.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
In their defense, ironically, they did really well on offense, right? They basically did nothing wrong, I suppose. I mean, they struggled a little bit on the very first push, but that was more of a matter of time rather than multiple fights for them to actually capture the first point. And then they just pretty much immediately went straight to the second point. And as you were saying before, reminiscent of the very first map, they were just winning fights without even using ultimates. They were just the icing on the cake to clean it up faster.
Yeah, they didn't need ultimates. They were so far ahead in terms of skill, just by pure aiming mechanics, they can win. And this is why it's so. When you see them completely roll through on the second cap of Anubis, that is kind of unprecedented because in the majority of cases, in the vast majority of cases, that just doesn't happen anymore.
Okay, so let's just disseminate this matchup, I think, in the wider context of this tournament, because it is just a sure thing now, right? We know this, it is evidenced, this cannot be disputed, as radical as some people may feel it is to say, Blank are a better team than Fireball. Full stop. The reason they won in most of those situations was just purely being better at the game. That is actually quite unusual, full disclaimer there. So, when you Fireball, there is at least one team in this tournament who you cannot beat, unless you just get better at the game. How do you, A, still push for top 3, and then B, even look at going beyond that? Or is this just an insurmountable thing? Is this a marker that Fireball are just not a playoffs team, radical as that may be to say?
Well, I don't think it's impossible because Fireball they've beaten Machi already, right? So this is using past results and Machi now better, which means Fireball can also improve themselves. If Machi are able to push themselves further, Fireball can also do the same and get above Machi. Again, if Machi are now a team that is potentially playing for a playoff spot, they're about to break the top 4, Fireball can realistically do the same thing. The biggest contenders for Fireball now are going to be HKA and Machi. Fireball's goal should be to beat HKA and Machi, and then they can also challenge Flash Wolves and AHQ, assuming Flash Wolves do recover from their current slump.
It's a tough spot for Fireball, right? Because last week, they were only really better than the Japanese teams and then Machi. And then now Machi has come out and just blown everyone away. Suddenly they're better than Flash Wolves in one match and then completely steamrolled the Japanese team. So now Fireball is sitting in a situation where they were completely gate-kept from position 4. Like, Hong Kong Attitude did not relent in their matchup at all, just shutting them out of the top 4. And now they're looking at Machi being a threat as well now. So while the matchup today against Blank doesn't say a huge amount because it's the favored, it's the expected outcome, right? Everyone expected Blank to win. And while it's a shame for Fireball, it's still on paper what was going to happen. The real goal for them is to get into the top 3, and with Hong Kong Attitude really barring their way, Machi now being someone who might bar their way as well, how are they even going to get into the top 4?
So
Yeah,
I want to kind
I
of
do
touch
agree
on
with
this
that.
because I feel there are two things to consider when we look at Fireball in comparison to Machi. The first one is Machi beat Fireball the first time these teams met, but that was before Fireball picked up any wins, and they changed things between losing to Machi and picking up those wins, which was what allowed them to get those wins. And they were very cognizant of that as well. They sort of spoke to that themselves in their interviews, Fireball. So that is one factor at play here. Fireball are better than when they lost to Machi, but the
think they
other
beat
thing
they
at play...
beat Machi.
Perhaps I'm thinking of Hong Kong Attitude in that case. But at any rate, Actually, you're right. They did actually.
It's Hong Kong
They did
attitude
beat
who
them.
completely demolished Fireball.
In that case, dash what I just said. What did you guys have for dinner last night?
Drink on.
So
did. We all
I
have
do really agree with you. Right now, they're not playing for top 3; they're playing for top 4 because they have to get past Machi. They have to get past Hong Kong Attitude. If they can do that, then their goal would be to get past AHQ and Flash Wolves, or AHQ or Flash Wolves, to make the top 3. That is the goal.
Taking a look at the standings here with that win. Blank Esports continue their dominant streak set up at 8-0. They have played less matches altogether than AHQ and Flash Wolves right this minute.
This is
But
incorrect.
in any case,
This is incorrect. Hong Kong Attitude should be at 5-3, which puts them at number 4.
you're actually quite correct there. But again, part of that is actually having played currently less matches than Matchy themselves. But at any rate, the teams we've just seen, Blank, they're still at the top. Nothing has changed that. And I feel like the only things that have a chance of changing that right now are the 3 Taiwanese teams, because Matchy are on the up and up, and then Flash Wolves and HQ are always going to be something of a threat. So do we still feel that Blank can actually beat those teams once again? Or has that changed?
What I think for Blank now is after Flash Wolves' recent performance, and I got to keep going back to that because it's so fresh. And I think Flash Wolves will be able to come back. Question is how soon. But for Blank, they haven't had. Look, if Blank have blank moments, Flash Wolves had what is worse than a blank moment? Because Flash Wolves actually lost. The worst Blank have had is they've gone through best of 5. Now Flash Wolves, the worst they've had now is they've literally lost, dropped the game.
Yeah,
to
they actually
someone
lost to Matchy.
other than Blank.
And
So
by the way, in losing to Matchy, right, they didn't just lose to a team that was like 1 or 2 ranks below them, right?
it's like 4 ranks.
They were 4. They'd already lost to Flash Wolves, to AHQ.
So
Flash Wolves.
I did have a point
they,
though.
Yeah.
I did have a point, which was, if Flash Wolves have done that now, realistically for Blank, it is possible for them to go through the whole tournament without losing a single match, because their biggest contenders, which were Flash Wolves, are showing signs of weakness that Blank have not even ever shown.
They make more crippling mistakes.
Yeah. So can Flash Wolves even come back and beat Blank? And right now it's looking like a no. For AHQ, I would say maybe they're even more likely to beat Blank than Flash Wolves are for both of those teams. It still feels unlikely, which means Blank have a real possibility of going through the whole tournament without a single loss.
I will say the same thing I said though during our first matchup of the sort of discussion that we've had here, and that is that we have only seen very few teams so far. I mean, we only have one recent Flash Wolves and AHQ game to go off. We have a lot of matchy games to go off, so I feel like the things we've been saying about them have been very justified. But as much as we can say this about Flash Wolves, yeah, sure, maybe, and they did make critical mistakes against matchy, but we have very little evidence for how the rest of this is going to go. So I'll come back to this in a moment because we are going to be jumping over to the interview, which is of course going to be in English.
Say hello to everybody.
Hello everyone, I'm IEU Up from Blank Esports.
你好，大家，我是 Blank Esports 的 IEU Up。
这边呢，一定大家都会有一个想法，因为其实大家常常在看电竞赛事的都知道，没有任何一败的战绩其实是很危险的。想问一下自己会不会觉得，像队伍到现在都还没有尝过一次败绩，会不会反而好像觉得找不到队伍的问题在哪里？
Since we're currently undefeated, does it cause us concern? And do we have problems like finding out where our weaknesses are?
So he's asking about their weaknesses.
Being undefeated is not really a concern, I guess. It's kind of expected, and there's not really we can still find out our weaknesses by just we've lost maps as well, in this tournament, so we can watch the VODs and just study those and find our weaknesses from there.
我们是预计是不会输的，但是就是因为有掉线地图，所以我们也是可以从那边来分析说我们哪里出错。
是的，今天第一场比赛是非常快速拿下胜利，但在第2场的时候注意到了，非常多主播赛评都觉得艾希瓦德是一个很少队伍会选择的地图，而又偏偏刚好是 Fireball 蛮擅长、蛮爱选择地图，为什么会在今天选择出来？
Why did we pick Eichenwalde despite knowing that Eichenwalde despite knowing Fireball favors Eichenwalde?
We're pretty good at Eichenwalde, and we just wanted to pick something different today, because just for the variety, I guess, and so we can get better at different maps as well.
我们本来就很擅长艾希沃的，然后只是觉得说我们那个选地图的话，需要有多一点，就选多一点地图来练习。
本来就很擅长艾希瓦德，那我有问题，有不擅长的图吗？你们？
Do we have any maps that we're not good at?
I don't know. Probably not.
没有。
没有，教练自己都心虚了啊！不会，今天艾希瓦德大家有看到一段非常有趣的画面，就是 NCNI 的闪光是躲在车子旁边，然后让你们推不了车，队友都没有发现吗？
Those are upon Eichenwalde where NZN as Tracer just blocked the cut for a long time. Did nobody notice?
Yeah, to be honest, none of us actually noticed, but there was actually no reaction as well after we killed him, but then, yeah, he just died and we kept going. Continue.
老实说，当时是没有人注意到，我们都是那个在专注其他地方，但是就是杀了他之后就觉得说，哦，就死了。
原来躲在那里，也没有特别的感觉。再来问一下阵型的部分，因为其实今天一直有讨论到1-3的阵型，那我也知道你们之前很爱尝试所谓的2-2刺客阵，那这两个阵型对你们来讲有什么区别吗
？Since we run both 2-2 and 3-1-2 dive on maps, what are the differences between these two comps?
I think the differences is like speed, I guess. The 3 DPS is generally you gotta go faster, I guess. Or actually, it's a bit slower than 2-2-2 because you don't have 2 tanks to just like go in. You gotta find the right timing and to make sure like you get the good positioning as well. And 2-2-2, it's easier for me as Tracer as well because there's 2 tanks and they can just matrix me as well when we go in together.
通常玩那个3-1-2的阵型的时候，都是要打比较保守一点，毕竟我们血比较薄，没有2只坦。然后他是比较偏向于喜欢那个有2-2的阵型，因为就会有2个坦来辅助他们。平常的话，倒是他受的伤害的话，就是单兵的实力。只是有2只坦的话，可以来分散一些激活。
好的，那阵型部分这边我了解，但我自己好奇想问一下教练，因为你们目前是没有尝过任何败绩的，你在带队上是不是其实蛮顺利的就感觉好像选手很自律耶。
可能会给大家这个印象，但是毕竟这是我们第一次大家真实碰面，然后第一次打线下赛，所以难免会有一些摩擦，但是不是什么很大的问题。
然后有哪些选手比较有想法嘛？就可能会站出来跟你讨论一些事情。
我们通常的话都是那个我刚把跟 RQT 3个人在讨论，或是制作战术，所以那个我们如果有什么事情要讨论的话，都是就我们3个在讨论。
好的，那最后你自己对于队伍目前是0败的状况，会不会感到有压力？
就像他说的，我们本来就是就是这场比赛的那个怎么说，就是我们本来就是预期说不会败，因为我们觉得是我们是这次比赛最强的队伍。但是你说压力的话也没有，因为我们毕竟也是天天有在练习，所以我们也都在进步，所以这个压力就不太大。
好的，那期待你们继续保持你们的不败战绩喽。那今天比赛就到这里告一个段落。那明天同一时间一样有精彩的斗争特工太平洋职业锦标赛，我们晚安，明天再见喽。
All right, well, there you have it.
You're looking at me like...
Yeah, the moment they started, like the moment he didn't translate it to English, we all just looked right at Kevin like, what is he saying? So, what was he saying? What was Serenity's thoughts there? What was being asked?
So the hostess was kind of asking about, in terms of how their team operates, you know, where's the leadership, who's making the decisions, both in and out of the game, and for Serenity, he's basically saying RQT and Gumba make the majority of the calls in the game, and outside the game, it's RQT and Gumba, then himself really managing the team as well as a whole. And another question asking sort of, now that, well, since they've been in the lead for so long now, do there feel sort of a pressure where you've been in the lead for so long, do you feel pressure that you might end up dropping a game? You know, you're obviously feeling pressure that you have to keep the lead going now that you're there, particularly because they're undefeated. And he's saying, well, they're very confident in the way they play. They're very confident in their ability. So not really feeling too much stress or too much pressure being in that leading position.
There you go. I think the thing I found most interesting was the thoughts on picking Eichenwalde was just cause.
Like I said, that's the nice version. That's a nice answer for what was basically Smite saying. They picked it as a kind of power performance play to show other teams they could play. Now, I don't know if they succeeded. If that was the case, I don't know if they succeeded in displaying that because, like, again, they dropped.
Well, yes,
Fireball.
They did make a mistake.
They showed weaknesses
Yeah.
to Fireball, and
Well,
if they wanted to flex on Eichenwalde, I don't think they really achieved it.
And I was actually about to sort of speak to that a little as well. I mean, even if the map pick was just cause, if nothing else, they have actually walked away from that with something that they clearly need to fix on a map that doesn't get played as often. And the important thing about that is now, should it come out against them again, given that it is uncommon and sometimes teams pick it to backfoot their opponents, Blank shouldn't make that same mistake. They may still, but they shouldn't do. I want to mention something else, though, that was really, really hilarious, I thought. Asking what maps do they feel like they're weak on?
I don't think they'd ever give that up publicly.
Yeah, even if there are maps you feel weak on, why are you going to tell everyone? Like, go ahead and pick Ilios against us. We're terrible at Ilios. Like, who's going to do that?
We're weak on Numbani, actually.
Psychology.
Yeah. We were actually really weak on Numbani, Lijiang Tower, and King's Row. Pick those, nothing else.
But seriously, King's Row is where they have dropped maps also, so maybe...
To MA Lakers.
Currently, to MA Lakers of all teams. But currently, that's been a topic that we've discussed already, and I feel like they patched up King's Row to the point now where they're no longer dropping King's Row, so...
Yeah, and with any luck, we'll actually see a bit of the same on Eichenwalde. So I just kind of want to close up our thoughts here on this. So Fireball, really, really harsh defeat there, and we've already talked a bit about what their journey throughout the rest of this tournament might look to be, but as it stands, they need, at the very least, a repeat performance of last round robin where they sort of started to swing up towards the end, but will that even be enough for them?
Well, it's like, if they want to get into the top 3, even the top 4, right? Think about what all the teams in the top 4 have right now. They've all taken swings at Blank and actually had an effect, right? Fireball has barely scratched Blank right now. They've barely had any effect on them in any of their maps. I mean, we saw Control, so many hundreds of zeros. Their best shot really was what they did on Eichenwalde, and even then, Flash Wolves, AHQ, Hong Kong Attitude, all teams above Fireball right now have actually taken games off of Blank right now, and Fireball don't seem anywhere close to that. So if they want to join the big boys club up in the top 4, the top 3, then that was not the showing that they needed to show today, but...
Yeah, need to start betting a little bit harder.
I like the criteria is how well have you done against Blank?
Blank are they're like the relative measure for for every other team.
It's not about breaking into the top 4. It's about breaking into the group that is
like,
second, third, and fourth.
It's like when you compare your results after a test. Like Fireball is sitting there like, man, I only got a 310 against Blank, like 3 out of 10, and like a Hong Kong Attitude like parading around like we got a 9 out of 10, like
which is actually only like
we nearly aced this like.
We got a 9 out of 10 and almost barely passing the test to beat Blank.
Yeah, and it turns out like actually that was just a really, really easy test. They just got an easy exam. Anyway, we're just totally stretched that to its logical limit now. But I kind of want to wrap up the other kind of half of that I was talking about before, and that is Blank very much undefeated. We talked about where their challenges may come from. We've also talked about a couple of things that they need to clean up, specifically on Eichenwalde. But gentlemen, was there anything else we noticed in that series? Any other places, even in their winning, where Blank could maybe have improved or done things differently that will work better against other teams?
I think Blank have done a good job of identifying the relative strength of the other teams and then playing to that strength. So against a team like Fireball, I'll be honest, Blank did play in a sort of, I guess disrespectful would be the correct word, but it's not an accurate or nice way to say it. Basically, they played a bit more aggressively. They played a bit more disrespectfully against Fireball, knowing that they were the better team. Now, they have to be able to correctly identify where the line in the sand is for that kind of play, because against a better team, they need to be a bit more reserved, a bit more calculated. They can't play like they played against Fireball against a better team. So what I said about Eat Up earlier on Eichenwalde, I feel like still holds, because stuff that Eat Up in particular does is punishable. He goes for the 1v1s really hard, and we've seen him get baited before. We've seen him lose in situations where he thought it was a 1v1, turns out it was a 2v1. Suddenly, that's a kill in the favor of the other team. So stuff like that, Blank have to be able to patch up.
Also, I feel like they weren't punished quite as hard for a lot of their mistakes, especially on Eichenwalde. Like, for example, when they lost the first point. Look at the difference between how Blank played the second part of that and how Fireball played that. Blank was immediately up on the high ground, and Fireball had no hopes of ever going on top of that castle again. When Blank lost the first point, they still managed to wrestle that point back up, off away from Fireball. I don't think Fireball were there entrenched soon enough to actually contest it. So again, the teams that are a little bit higher up in the second, third, and fourth, Flash Wolves, etc., they would actually punish Blank if they had taken the first point that easily off a single sleep dart. So again, I feel like they had maybe an easier ride on the second phase defense than maybe they should have.
And I suppose I want to throw in my own thoughts here as well, because as much as we're talking a lot about Eichenwalde, we'd also have to touch on the other thing that previously had arguably been a weakness for Blank, and that's assault. So they did win the assault. They won it in spectacular fashion, but we did also note that they got a huge snowball cap out on the second point. It's a way that teams used to win the second point, but it's not how people currently play assault, where it's, like you sort of identified, that more kind of chipping away third by third to get the cap out. So as much as they won, I don't know if we can quite say that they've shored up the weakness, because if they still can't play that chip away style, it's going to come back to bite them when they play teams like Flash Wolves and AHQ. So are there any other things we maybe want to say just about the night in general? Because, gentlemen, we are starting to see a little bit more of how the second round robin is shaping up, and it is a little bit different to the first round robin as a whole. Are there any particular teams our viewers at home ought to be watching out for right now?
Probably Blank. Watch out for those guys. I hear they're pretty good.
Oh yeah, just a little bit.
So far, I think Honko Attitude still need to push a little bit further. I think that they can't get complacent here. Their rate of improvement has kind of, in my eyes, stagnated. Similarly, Sun Sister and Detonator Gold are still in a position where they're in an incredibly difficult place, and they can't scrape out even map wins at this rate. So
Okay, so what about looking out for in the positive sense, guys? Like,
I was
all right,
there,
okay, here we go.
Which is again the big shining beacon is Machi, because they've now shone through and are currently on a hot streak of wins. So for Machi, this has been a fantastic start to the second round robin.
If you're looking for an underdog story, which I know a lot of fans really go for in these sort of things, Machi are definitely the team to do that. They've already proven that they can do an underdog victory, the first team to actually do so in the Pacific Championship, taking out Flash Wolves. And then tonight, they got expected results, but they were very, very dominating results against the two Japanese teams. If the real exciting matches are going to be when they come up against Fireball, Hong Kong Attitude, and then AHQ. Blank, I feel like it's going to be a completely different story. They just seem to be on a completely different level to the teams below them right now. But still look out for that matchup. Machi can still pull out a few tricks up against Blank.
Yeah, well, we won't be seeing much more of Machi for the remainder of this week, but we will definitely see them a whole lot more moving forward. They've still got a lot of matches to play out in the second round robin, as do all of the teams, in fact. So that does wrap up the second day of week 4, top of the second round robin for this event so far. We still, of course, have more games coming up tomorrow before we draw this week to a close. But that is what it is for tonight. So from all of us here at the Full Production Circle team, Full Circle Production team, thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful night.